Hey, what's going on, everybody? Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker. Some bonus audio for you today. We don't have a full show. We don't have a show, period, because of NCAA men's basketball tournament coverage, courtesy of Westwood One on 106.9 The Fan FM, 1390 AM, on the 106.9 The Fan mobile app, and on 106.9thefan.com. That's Thursday and Friday from 4 o'clock in the afternoon until the evening with a bunch of games in the Sweet 16. Games will pick up again on Saturday and Sunday for the Elite Eight, but that means no live show for Jason and myself. So we're doing some bonus audio because there's still plenty of important stuff going on that we need to discuss and need to talk about, and it certainly involves the Utah State men's basketball program. The Aggies are going to be graduating a couple players. There's some uncertainty about others who may have some eligibility still remaining, but will they really come back or not? We've already discussed that. But there seems to be growing attention in players that Utah State may be targeting through the transfer portal. But more important than that is who will be coaching these players next year. Ryan Odom, as you would suspect, is getting some attention from some different places around the country with some vacancies. Does it make sense for him to jump ship and make a move or stick around at Utah State University? And there's been some rumors flying. And look, it shouldn't come to a surprise to anybody that Ryan Odom would be somebody that a program would want to speak with, whether that's a high mid-major or somebody in the power conferences, because he has shown an ability to play good basketball and recruit decent players and compete at a very competitive Mountain West and get to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, obviously, Odom's a big deal around here now. He's shown to be successful. But yeah, I mean, probably just a week ago or even a couple of days ago, I was thinking, Ryan Odom, he's here to stay, at least for another year. Obviously, if he keeps coaching like this, he's going to leave. It's the way it goes.
Yes.
And I was kind of in the opinion of, okay, you get one more year. I mean, Craig Smith took Utah State. His team's qualified for the NCAA tournament every year he was at Utah State. And it took, 3 years, and even then, despite the fact there was certainly a lot of rumors, it kind of came out of nowhere, him going to Utah. It was, with that one, it felt like there was like one more year. But like I said, 3 years, NCAA tournament each time, had all conference guys on like every single one of those teams, was doing a really good job, and he lasted 3 years. And, it took a Pac-12 school to draw him away. Well, Ryan Odom, he's been here 2 years, has an NIT and an NCAA tournament, so a slightly lower resume, fewer conference championships, 0 to 2 or 3, or I don't know, conference regular season versus
regular season versus tournament.
I can't do the math in my head on that right now. I'd have to go back and look, but multiple, obviously.
Yes.
But yeah, Ryan Odom, it's almost like he's testing the waters right now to leave. Now, each person is different. It's not like saying, okay, a good coach is going to stay around minimum 3 years. Things can change, and they can change quickly. And things can vary just based off personality. But, I don't know, it just feels like Ryan Odom leaving. I don't know if he's actually looking to leave, if he's trying to get an extension, what he's trying to do. There was one report, I don't know how concrete it is. It's just somebody on Twitter that says that Ryan Odom has interviewed with South Florida, which is weird because I don't think that would be an upgrade. And then George Mason is another school that a lot of people are pointing to, at least the buzz around George Mason, the sports fans and media, is they're all over Ryan Odom. But that'd be another step down. Not a huge step down, but it took Craig Smith, a Pac-12 team, to lure him away. Ryan Odom seems to be... Now, when you're interviewing with other schools, that's the red flag.
Yeah.
Media saying, go after this guy, okay, that happens. Reports that they're actually interviewing, okay, that's real. That's where you get worried, because if you get to the interview process, they're all willing to leave.
Yeah, and you have to try to figure out what do we know about Ryan Odom? Like, what What are his motivations? Where is he from? Where does he want to go? There can be multiple reasons why somebody might take a different job. And even if it may appear as somewhat of a lateral move, there are multiple reasons that could be at play. And I think one of them that certainly I think a lot of folks need to be thinking about is this is a guy who's grown up on the East Coast. His dad is there. His dad is older. How much it will be that desire be to pull on him to be close to his father in his later years, and he knows how to recruit the East Coast, especially that Delmarva area. It's kind of a confluence of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia.
Never heard that term before in my life.
You've never heard Delmarva?
I'm not from the East Coast, so no. I've not even been that far north on the... Actually, no, I have. Went to New York a few times. But no, not really.
We're learning something new
New
today.
York is the only East Coast I've ever been to, and I've been there like a combined 20 days. That's pretty much it.
Well, besides, areas where he's familiar, recruiting ground where he's familiar, family, trying to be, having a desire to be close to family. Those are strong pulls. But sometimes some of the schools that you're looking at, you mentioned George Mason. That's you go to a destination where it might look like a lateral move or even a step down, but you're going to a program that. Like, basketball is the sport on that campus. And so sometimes you have an opportunity to be the king, right, of what's going on in athletics. And I don't think that Utah State has a bad situation here for him at all. And I don't know that Blake Anderson is necessarily the king on campus in athletics, because he hasn't been here very long either. He hasn't been here long enough to build that equity among the community so much, especially after the way last year went. But Ryan Odom's star is rising. There's no question about it. And besides some of those that are maybe lateral or step downs, as we might consider, there's some power conferences who have vacancies who may be taking a look at him as well. But you always have to be cautious, I think, if we had an opportunity to have our own little bug in his ear, the grass isn't always greener. What are you really stepping into? Well, you may have an opportunity to coach, like Cal still has a vacancy. You may have an opportunity to coach in the Pac-12, but Cal is a bad situation for coaching right now. They have bad facilities. They have a bad track record. They don't have great history. That's not a good basketball coaching destination.
Yeah, and I think you might look at Craig Smith, where he jumped seemingly at the first, major conference job. Probably wasn't super smart about it, because maybe if he could do it over again, he might have waited and gotten a better job, because, more money. And I'm sure Craig Smith is not regretting 1 second the contract money he's getting, but for a guy who's obviously very passionate about basketball, very, very much wants to win, and obviously we got to see him what kind of person he was a little bit, might be regretting the fact that he's at a school that does not prioritize basketball 1 second. It's the afterthought. It's basically the same as their other.
Right, it absolutely used to be a basketball school, and he talks about being an historian and all the great things that Utah accomplished in the past. But in modern history, it has not been a basketball school.
Yeah, and I wonder if he thought he could do the same to Utah that he kind of did at Utah State, where Utah State hadn't had the same kind of downhill roll that Utah's had, where they just slowly, just year after year, like after the mid-2000s and maybe early 2010s, Utah's just gone downhill in terms of how much people care. And they don't even necessarily had bad teams. They've not really had a period where the team is bad. People just don't seem to care anymore.
Yeah.
And it's been outstripped by at least BYU and largely by Utah State, as those are the two basketball schools. Like, even UVU is surpassing BYU in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And Utah for sure.
And so Craig Smith, arguably the best coach in the entire state in terms of basketball, excluding Will Hardy, Like, he's probably at like the 4th best basketball school at the moment. I mean, that you can sort of make the argument between them and UVU and whatnot, but in terms of the amount of attention people are looking at it, Craig Smith took a step down in some ways. Obviously took a step up in other ways. And so in that way, it kind of comes down to what you want.
Right.
There's certainly a lot of us who, if you double or triple our paycheck, maybe we'd go to a place that's slightly worse. And it's not like Craig Smith's in a hellhole in Utah.
No.
Like I said, Utah's not had bad teams. It's not like he went to a 4-25 Utah team and has had a bunch of seasons like that. He went 18-16 this year? Or something around that.
It was a big difference. It was a big improvement this year compared to last. You can tell that there are things that are happening there. They were struck with some injuries a little bit. But I think there's also some ego with these coaches taking these jobs, thinking, okay, it hasn't worked there for these other guys, but I've had a proven track record of success. I know how to make things work. I can go in there and bring it back to its glory. And I'm sure that's what was on Craig Smith's mind.
Yeah.
And is Ryan Odom wired the same way? I don't know. But certainly an opportunity to step up and earn more money and be in a competitive conference and get to the NCAA tournament, have a path to the NCAA tournament. I mean, does he have an easier path of getting into the ACC as a coach if he stays here another year or two versus if he goes somewhere like a George Mason? I don't know. But I certainly think that the Mountain West has proven itself as a really good basketball conference. And if you can succeed here, then you're going to have opportunities to coach at the highest level. And so I think his path would be quicker to the ACC, if that is his end goal, to get back to his roots, if you will. I think that his path there is probably easier if he stays here for another couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Than going somewhere else, starting fresh, maybe not really understanding what players you have or the league that you play in and getting caught up to speed and what it takes to compete at that level. He already knows what the Mountain West is all about.
Yeah, I think that, if Odom wants to move up, staying here is fine. Because, the A10, with that's George Mason, or what conference is UCF? They're the
American.
The American. Those are the peer conferences of the Mountain West. You'd call it a sideways move, probably at worst. Maybe you could call it a downward move because, the A10 was a one-bid conference this year. They've been one or two bid conference for the last 5 years. Mountain West has been 2-3 bid conference.
4 bids the last 2 years.
Yeah. So,
each.
Slight difference. The A10 used to regularly get more tournament. They had as many as 6 a while back. But yeah, the Mountain West is, if you're a coach, it's a great place to launch your career into the Power 5 or the mid-major, whatever.
Basketball, it's a little different.
I know. I say Power 5 for football, and then I say
6.
major conference for basketball because it can be slightly different.
Yeah, you have to include the Big East, I think, in basketball.
I think that's – I had some people get on my mentions one time a few years ago because I called a Big East team a mid-major team. I can't even remember which team it was. I think it was Georgetown.
Yeah.
Maybe. That was probably a mistake. But but anyway, it's because I kind of consider the Big East to not be a major conference anymore. Because, they weren't in football. They kind of still are in basketball. So
yeah.
But still, that tangent aside, it just doesn't make a ton of sense for Odom to move. But then again, I'm not making this decision for Odom. So whatever his motivations may be, maybe he wants to move back, but Craig Smith was from Minnesota.
Yeah, but Craig Smith had spent time in Colorado because he was an assistant at Colorado State. He was familiar with the conference. He was familiar with the Intermountain region. This is a much different situation for Odom, where it's much more of a fish out of water for Odom than it was for Smith.
Yes. So I guess he'd be more likely to want to go back east. Yeah, because most of his stuff is East Coast. But are you willing to, sidestep, take a risk for just familiarity's sake. Because I don't know if you're going to step into a much better position at any of these other schools, unless some major conference team offers him. Then yeah, you'd go because you get more money, more resources, and if you're good enough, you can turn a program around. That's a risk. Craig Smith took that risk with Utah. So, but going to another major conference, because, yeah, you're taking the risk that the transition isn't going to go smoothly. Not everything just transitions perfectly.
No.
You're not going to go for, you're going from a Utah State team that just went to an NCAA tournament, and if they make the right moves in the offseason, they'll probably go again next year. If they land the right transfers to fill a couple of the holes they have, they'd be an NCAA tournament team again.
Right. There's enough on the roster that they should be in the top tier of the Mountain West next year.
You're bringing back a first-team all-conference player, another honorable mention. You've got some up-and-coming guys that look like they could maybe, make some improvement. Like you had guys this year break out and make improvements, and you've got more guys behind them who could do the same. Odom's shown the ability to develop these guys pretty well, and then if they do that with the guys they've already got on the roster, add some transfers, boom. Another NCAA tournament team, or at the very least NIT. So he's in a good position. Are you going to give up a good position for, I don't know, is it going to work? Are these new players, I'm not familiar with them, I don't know their game. If you transfer, if you move, then you got to are you going to be able to convince the recruits you've already spent time trying to get to Utah State? Are you going to actually get them to commit now to your new school? That's a lot of risk. That's why for me, from that point, and mind you, I'm looking at this from a Utah State perspective.
Yeah.
And not Ryan Odom's, because Odom, he has different motivations, different wants, needs, all that. But from a basketball perspective, even with the Utah State blue tint in this perspective, it doesn't make sense for Ryan Odom to make a lateral move. Unless he's just making a lateral move and he plans to stay at that, that kind of mid-major school for 5-10 years. Because, what's one more year? 1 or 2 more years at Utah State? I know it's, fish out of water, East Coast guy. Why did he come out here in the first place if he was such a homebody?
Yeah. Well, if you've never gotten that far, then maybe you don't realize how homesick you could, how much you enjoy the area.
Utah State was the team that dragged him out of UMBC. You know how many people probably wanted Ryan Odom after he beat Virginia as a 16 seed and was consistently conference contending year over year in the I forget what conference they're in.
Colonial?
I think so. Not 100% sure.
I'm not sure.
But yeah, he was consistently in the conference championship year over year, either regular season or the tournament game. Obviously, he got in the 1 year because he won the tournament game. So there were plenty of suitors, I'm sure, that wanted him mid-major, maybe even a major conference team, but he turned them down. And Utah State was the one that managed to drag him out of there. I just feel like there's not a good enough reason for Odom to leave unless his motivation to go back east is just that strong, which, fair enough.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is on people's minds are they want to know what is Utah State doing to keep him? And
so far as I'm aware, nothing.
Well, and I don't know if I would say that. I mean, they don't broadcast so much their moves and what they're doing, but I would be shocked if donors and Jerry Bovee are not trying to find some ways to get some extra money to Ryan Odom and his staff to get him to stay. I would be shocked because that's what they should be doing, and look, Jerry Bovee was able to do that and hang on to his guy at Weber State for a very long time, and who was a hot commodity for a long time. So this is not new territory for Jerry Bovee to be in.
Well, the problem is he's an interim athletic director. Is he allowed to do that?
If the donors step up, he's just the intermediary. I think he's the acting. Yes, he's interim, but he is the acting athletic director. And this is certainly going to be something that a lot of fans. I don't know how much the new administration at the university will look on this, but this will be one of those moments that could define whether Jerry Bovee stays on as the athletic director, if he deserves to retain and keep that title, if he's able to pull this off and keep Ryan Odom in-house.
Yeah, that'd be the ideal. If he's able to keep him around, then, hats off. It's because it's tough. It's tough to keep these guys around for a while because you're in the perfect position where people with lots of money are able to throw it at your coaches when they perform well. So,
but we talked about George Mason. Maybe George Mason in South Florida seem to be the schools where we hear Ryan Odom's name attached to him the most. And South Florida, they're in the American Athletic. They haven't had a season above 500 in 6 years.
Yeah,
maybe one season in the last 6 years where they've been an above mediocre team. They're in the American Athletic, where Houston, very good program. Memphis, okay. Cincinnati, Temple. There's some notable.
3 of those are leaving.
Well, that's true.
The
There's
first
some
3
change
names
there.
you listed are leaving.
There's going to be some change over there. That's true. SMU might be on the move, too, if they end up going to the Pac-12. So there would be a lot of turmoil there. Wichita State has had some history. They just hired a new coach. I mean, there's been some good basketball in that conference, but you're right. It's going to look very different over the next few years. George Mason, they're in the A10, the Atlantic 10. They won 20 games this year. And that's a conference with VCU, Dayton, the St. Louis Billikens, Davidson, the Bonnies. So there's some St. Joe's. There's some teams there that have done some things historically, but
there's some pretty.
It's a pretty big conference.
Yeah, there's some known mid-major teams. You named off a lot of the names people recognize because they're the teams that you see in your bracket every March. Oh yeah, Davidson and VCU and Dayton. You see them all the time. But still, they're also like they're not any better than the Mountain West is doing. I was going to say they're always 10, 11, 12 seeds, which is what the Mountain West always is. But it's like, again, it's at best a lateral step. And like, what? You're just going to end up being a big fish in a small pond. I know that's not something you can really do at the Mountain West right now because, there's some bigger fish, but it's better competition. Being in the Mountain West got Utah State to the tournament this year.
Got you 18 seed? It's 18 in the net?
Yeah. That's what being in the Mountain West helped Utah State do.
Yeah.
With a relatively weak non-conference schedule, they did beat some good mid-majors, but with, relatively weak non-conference schedule, their conference schedule put them, the games that launched Utah State, gave them like quad 1 or, high quad 2 games, those were all conference games. Beating Boise State in the conference tournament locked Utah State into the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true.
That it wouldn't have happened in a lot of these other mid-major conferences. So that's why it's like it's hard to see like why is Ryan Odom interviewing at South Florida? Why would he be interviewing with George Mason? Like for basketball reasons, it makes no sense. But people don't always do things for basketball reasons, and that's why I can't just throw this out as pure rumor that's not going to happen. He may end up leaving.
Right.
And there may be nothing to do about it.
A financial incentive could be one thing. A program where you are the program on campus. You're not competing for the interest of other programs. Just being close to home, being familiar with your recruiting territory and not that far from family. His parents are older. I don't know if his mom's still around. I don't know. I know his dad is still alive, but he's older. He came out and visited the team, and who knows? Maybe him coming out here just made Coach Odom feel like he needed to be closer to the senior Coach Odom. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there are things in a person's life that can be a real pull on you that mean more than just basketball reasons.
Yeah. And well, heck, Stu Morrill stuck around forever. It wasn't because his mother was, growing older and was she from Utah?
I think she was in Provo.
Yes, so he stuck around for not necessarily coaching basketball ambitions.
No, he had opportunities to go to Utah. He had opportunities to go to Washington State. He had opportunities to go elsewhere. Sometimes I think he took those interviews to leverage a better contract, and that is a coaching tactic.
Which hopefully that's what Ryan Odom's doing.
And I can't fault him for that. But if it's purely for basketball reasons, it makes more sense if he just stays.
Yeah. That's the thing. With Utah State benefited from maybe non-basketball reasons to retain a coach for 20 years. Maybe they're about to lose one for not necessarily basketball reasons. Hopefully he stays around.
But we talked about who could be coming in to Utah State. Looking at the players that may be coming in or targeted to fill certain voids in the roster, either filling needs that will be filling holes that are there because of graduation, or just the roster needs to be better in these specific areas. You were able to kind of track down some players who look like they're in the portal that are showing some interest from Utah State.
Yeah, so basically just searching around Twitter. That's like, because you see these tweets, they say, "Oh, this player has heard from the following schools." So I just did some keyword searches on Twitter, and I tracked down 5 players that reportedly have received, or had, like, Utah State has reached out to these players, according to people on Twitter. That they'll say that the player has told them and such and such. So I'm just going with reports. I can't confirm any of these. I just know that people have said that. So there's 5 of them. 4 of them are D1. One's actually a Division II player. And it kind of goes to show that it seems like there's, and I've done some research to try and see, track down, sleuthing, who are the assistant coaches following on Twitter and trying to sleuth around and find players that Utah State may be interested in. And it seems like they're basically trying to fill 2 voids. One is at point guard, or at least just a ball-handling guard. They want somebody who can handle the ball and basically allow Stephen Ashworth to have somebody else who can play point guard, give him some rest, or maybe allow him to play off ball if they decide to play a bit of a shorter 2-guard lineup, like they did with Ryland Jones. And also to have Max Shulga's ability to play point guard be more of a luxury and not a necessity. Basically giving them a little bit more depth there. So they want a ball-handling guard, and they also want a forward. Somebody who can play small forward, ideally small forward and power forward, because they are going to have holes. If what I assume is true about who's staying and going, they're going to have 2 open spots. So they're filling one with the ball-handling guard, and the problem is they'll have a hole with Sean Bairstow leaving and Taylor Funk leaving. And you got to somehow fill both of those, even though they have technically replacements on the roster, Z Himoda at small forward, but is he quite ready to jump into that role yet? We're not sure.
Yeah. At
power forward, they have 2 incoming freshmen. Do you want to rely on 2 incoming freshmen as your entire power forward rotation? Neither of those ideal. So you're trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone with 1 recruit. They might be able to do that. But like I said, they're trying to find just a forward, a wing who can ideally play both positions. So with that long preamble,
that's the preface.
The 5 that I've tracked down that have reportedly received interest from Utah State. You have E.J. Jarvis. He's a 6'8" forward from Yale, pretty athletic. I think he averaged 1.5 blocks this last year. Oh, where is he? 1.6 blocks, averaged 12 points, 6 rebounds. This year he actually broke out a 3-point shot. His first 2 years he went 0 of 8, basically wasn't a shooter. This year he made 13 of 42 threes, so 1.1 threes per game he attempted, but made 40% of them. So broke out a 3-point shot and it was working at low volume. Another one, this is the D2 guy, Lamont Sanders. He's a 6-foot guard out of Adams State. He only played in 9 games this year because of an injury, but he averaged 16 points, almost 4 rebounds, 3 assists.
So he's a scorer.
Yeah, so he's a scorer. He shot 42% from 3 on fairly high volume. I think he only played 9 games, but I think he had 40-something 3-point attempts in 9 games. So volume 3-point shooter who made 40% of his threes at that volume. Another one, this is a name people will have definitely heard of, Roddy Anderson. Roddy Anderson III. Son of the similarly named Roddy Anderson, who played for the Aggies around the time I was born.
Early 90s?
Yeah, early 90s. I was born in the middle of his time. I think it might have been during his first season at Utah State. So the younger Roddy Anderson, freshman at UC San Diego, had pretty low field goal percentage numbers. People have said that a lot of that is he was relied on heavily for his offense and took hard shots and missed a lot of hard shots. I don't know how true that is. I've not watched a ton of film of him. But he is a quick, athletic guard. Plays smart defense. In what film I've seen, I was really impressed with his movement on defense, helping out, rotating well. But last year he averaged 13 points, about 4 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and about 1 steal per game. Another one, I don't know how to say his name, Mustafa Amzil. His first name is almost Mufasa, which was... I don't know if that's a nickname of his. Think of him as the Taylor Funk replacement. And I'm not the first person to say that, nor would I be the last, especially if he came to Utah State. But he's 6'10", takes a similar number of threes. Just watching him, it feels like he's Taylor Funk, but slightly taller. Comes out of Dayton, so same conference as Taylor Funk came out of.
Yeah, that's true.
He didn't produce as much as Funk did. Funk had a couple seasons of 13-plus point per game. Amzil, he averaged 9 points, 4 rebounds. And is probably a slightly worse shooter, whereas Funk was in the 37-38%. Amzil is at like 36.5%. But that's still solidly above average and at volume. So that guy's, your Taylor Funk. And he's only a sophomore. He's only a sophomore this last year, so you can get 2 more years out of him. And then the last one, this is certainly the top one probably on the wish list, but he's probably going to go to a much bigger conference. He's getting a lot of attention from some bigger conferences. T-Fel Leonard Jr., at least I think that's how you say his first name. He was a junior this last year, 6'8" forward. He's a sophomore. It's T-Fel Leonard Jr., and I interpret that. He's actually a sophomore, not a junior.
Yeah, that can be confusing.
I misread my own tweet. That was the problem. Middle Tennessee State. He is an athlete's athlete. Like, holy cow. The man, it's crazy watching the stuff he does. Even a decent ball handler. He averaged 8 points, 4 rebounds, an assist and a half. He also averaged 1.6 steals and 1.8 blocks. This is like a small forward. So, and he was the all defensive player. He was on the all defensive team for Conference USA. Probably would have been defensive player of the year had Conference USA not had the nation's leader in blocks. That guy won defensive player of the year. But Leonard is great defender, versatile. I think he can shoot a little bit. I don't think he's an elite shooter, but holy cow, he would be great on Utah State.
That'd be, a great addition for this team.
Yeah, so some interesting players. I don't know how many of them are actually going to end up at Utah State. Some of these guys are getting a lot of attention from other places, but it's a start.
Well, yeah, those kind of fill some interesting needs, or at least shore up Utah State and with guys that they already have on roster. So this will be interesting to see how long it takes for some of these guys to decide where they want to go. It's kind of fluid right now. New players putting their names in the portal. Some have already declared, but there's still guys playing. So it's going to still be a little bit before this kind of settles down and resolves itself, with the NIT still going and the NCAA tournament still underway. But as those teams narrow down, you'll see more of these kind of players declare, and maybe others declare their intentions to transfer, and others who declare where they're headed. Interesting, I guess we'd call it a post from Hunter Maldonado just the other day. This was yesterday, but with all the things going on at Wyoming, really found it interesting what he said and why he felt compelled to take to social media to share his opinion. And we know of all the the trouble that's been going on in Wyoming with players leaving. But Maldonado this is a guy who could have left last year, but decided to stick around for an extra year of eligibility for what he believed was going to be a very special season for the Cowboys, and it didn't materialize. But this is what he went and took to social media to say. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's kind of lengthy. But basically, he's kind of calling out players for having a sense of entitlement, like expecting coaches to coddle them. And he defended Coach Linder. And that if anybody is coming after Coach Linder, thinking that he's the reason, he's at fault for why these guys are leaving, they're misunderstood. He had high praise for Coach, how he coached him personally and individually. And you can tell this is somebody that had a lot of pride in his program, and he's upset with what's transpired over these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I saw the same post, and I was like, yeah. It's a guy going after the toxic areas of fandom, and you saw some hints of it. I didn't see too much of it. I'm not super deep into Wyoming Twitter, but I'm sure there were a lot of people who were being pretty toxic about, trying to blame Jeff Linder and bagging on the program. And Maldonado obviously wasn't having it. I'm sure there, when we've talked probably, I don't know too much about Wyoming for, Utah State-centric program. But I imagine a lot of people around Wyoming have a similar feeling where they just, they raise their fist to the sky and say, oh, what could have been? But there's some that clearly aren't taking that approach. And they're trying to find somebody to blame. They say somebody has to be at fault. There has to be, it's like finding conspiracy and Illuminati. I'm not saying they're conspiracy there, but that same kind of thinking where they can't accept that this is just a lot of random chance that just win against them. And they have to say, no, somebody's at fault, and we're going to find who it is, and we're going to metaphorically,
right,
Twitter cancel them or whatever, whatever the modern lynching is, the internet rage.
We got to find the boogeyman, yeah.
Yeah, basically. And so, obviously, I don't think Maldonado's attacking the Wyoming fan base. I think he's attacking a toxic area of it. A toxic aspect is that fits into every fan base.
Something that he did say, and that I do want to read, and this is worth everybody hearing. He says, "You fans want loyal guys, yet are the first ones to message us in our DMs about how bad we are and how we should leave. You guys turn on us just as quick. Everyone wants to point the finger at someone because our season didn't go as planned, but sometimes the chips don't fall your way." I can't imagine being one of these players, and you have an off night for various reasons. Maybe you don't feel good. Maybe you're sick. Maybe, somebody's having a hard time at home and that's weighing on you. You have a hard game, and then all these fans are tagging you in their social media like, oh, you were terrible. Why are you even here? What are you even doing? It's like you're just piling on to a bad situation, not making it better. You're making it worse.
Yeah, it's never made sense to me, and I have to deal with the balance of, when I'm writing my stories and writing my tweets, like part of my job is to analyze, and some of that may be saying, okay, this dude had a bad game, or offering my opinion saying, maybe I don't think this guy's a very good player. So sometimes I kind of have to say those things, but you try and limit it to the point where it's like, what would the point in dragging this person down be? If I'm offering analysis, I'll offer analysis and be honest about it. But I'm not going to be a negative person about it. And that can be the difference, because there's people that say, oh, he had a bad game. Okay, whatever. You can point that out. But there are people who are being absolute jerks about it. And they're taking out their own rage on people who, okay, sure, they made a mistake. They missed a shot. They missed a field goal. They missed a tackle. Okay, is that making them deserving of your rage? No. And that's the toxic aspect of fandom, where there are realities of analyzing your team and talking about it on Twitter and message boards and all that. And then there's the toxic people who make angry phone calls to athletic departments and coaches and referees and do all these horrible things. For what?
I know.
It's just pointless, and it's what you don't want to see. We want to see the positive aspects, of fandom. And we even tolerate some of the kind of on their surface negative aspects of fandom, the, trash talking and things like that. But that can all be part of the fun. Making clever jokes about the other people at their expense. But we're not being horrible, toxic people in that moment.
You're right. Yeah.
And so these kind of people that are DMing players, telling them they're horrible and they hope they, tear their ACL. It's like, don't ever watch a sporting event ever again.
Yeah, please don't.
Please go away.
Yeah,
nobody wants you.
You
Nobody
can talk
likes
about
you.
the play, but don't talk about the person, the person's character. That's just not our place. With this Ryan Odom stuff, we'll be continuing to keep a very close eye on it. Hopefully, this is opportunity to seek leverage for a better deal and an extension, which you've got an interim AD who has a history of doing this and knows how it goes. This isn't somebody who's sitting for the first time in the big chair. So Aggie fans should at least take comfort in that. I would be shocked if donors aren't working in concert with the athletic department to try to find a way to keep him. But at the end of the day, it could be different motivational factors here for Ryan Odom to get back east, beyond just basketball. So we'll keep an eye on it. If more develops, we'll try to get on an emergency pod to talk about it. But for at least today and tomorrow, no live show, but we'll continue to do what we can to give some bonus audio on the 106.9 The Fan podcast feed. But thanks again for tuning in and listening to the show. If you want to explore past episodes or past interviews that we've done, feel free to check out the podcast feed on 1069thefan.com.